Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Jana Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravana-chari Jamuna Tiravana-chari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Sachinandana Gaura Hari. Jaya Panchatattva, Jaya Panchatattva, Panchatattva, Jaya Panchatattva. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Om Vishnuvan Paramamsa Paragaj Acharya Stotar Satashishi Mother Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Kota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Gantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Namo Vishnuvedaya Krishna Sarvadesha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, Text number 38. Prayers by Queen Kunti. Kevayam namarupabhyam yadubisha pandava bhavato darshanam yarhi hrishikanam iveshitu. Kevayam namarupabhyam yadubisha pandava bhavato darshanam yarhi Rishikanam iveshita. Kevayam namarupabhyam yadubisaha pandava bhavato darshanam yarhi rishikanam iveshitu. And the word for word translation. Ke, who are. Vayam, we. Namarupabhyam, without fame and ability. Yadubi, with the Yadus. Saha, along with. Pandava, and the Pandavas. Mavata, your. Adarshanam, absence. Yarhi, as if. Rishikanam, of the senses. Eva, like. Ishitu, of the living being. The translation. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. And the name and fame of a particular body is finished with the disappearance of the living spirit. Similarly, if you do not look upon us, all our fame and activities, along with the Pandavas and Yadus, will end at once. And the purport. Kunti Devi is quite aware that the existence of the Pandavas is due to Sri Krishna only. The Pandavas are undoubtedly well established in name and fame, and are guided by the great king Yudhishthir, who is morality personified. And the Yadus are undoubtedly great allies. But without the guidance of Lord Krishna, all of them are non-entities, as much as the senses of the body are useless without the guidance of consciousness. No one should be proud of his prestige, power, and fame without being guided by the favor of the Supreme Lord. The living beings are always dependent, and the ultimate dependable object is the Lord himself. We may therefore invent by our advancement of material knowledge all sorts of counteracting material resources, but without being guided by the Lord, all such inventions end in fiasco, however strong and stout the reactionary elements may be. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. This is kind of an extraordinary purport as well by Srila Prabhupada, an extraordinary verse. And there are different things that you could take out of it. One of the things that I did take was about this whole idea of existence. That's the very basis of us, of who we are, our existence. We have the science of self-realization, who we actually are. We also have the science of who everybody else is as well, you know. Who are we in relation to others? But specifically, which is mentioned here, is who are we in relation to Krishna or God? Although in the verse and the purport, Srila Prabhupada and Vyasadeva are describing about how we really don't have any significant identity without Krishna's guidance or Krishna's presence. So, you know, where do we? I was actually taking what do you call it? Krishna. I'm trying to think of the words now. It's a philosophical term. Existential kind of. Existential, exist. I was thinking that sort of a meaning out of it. We don't even exist without Krishna. What to speak of being in specific bodies that Krishna is empowering, like the Pandavas, and so many other bodies that so many other spirit souls that Krishna is empowering. And also you can limit it down to is empowering in this material world. All Krishna's qualities. Some people have some fame, some beauty, some strength, some knowledge, some enunciation, and some, I can't remember the sixth one now, just offhand. Pardon? Strength, yes, that's the good one. So we're, you know, we don't have any, we all have some part of what Krishna is, so we're part of Krishna's existence. But here in this purport, Krishna is Prabhupada is speaking about the existence of the Pandavas. Kunti is talking about the existence that, like, it's almost like, what's the point in us being around unless Krishna's there giving us some meaning to our lives and giving us significance, a significant existence. Because there's so many seeming insignificant existences. How is it put? But at the guidance of Lord Krishna, all of them are non-entities. That's a very strong word, because Prabhupada's using that. I mean, we cannot be non-entities. That's one of the things Prabhupada talks about in the Bhagavad Gita. We cannot be non-entities. But I think he's using it in this sense there, that we're not significant entities socially in conjunction with Krishna's activities here on the planet. And what Krishna wants to do here. I mean, we can spend millions of lifetimes uselessly in karma, when we have done millions of lifetimes in karmic activities which are temporary. They're real, but they're temporary, so they don't have any ultimate significance for us of who we are. We may identify with bodies all over the place. But in this situation here, Queen Kunti she's identifying with being the existence as in relation to Krishna, in Krishna's pastimes. So that's real significance. And in fact, that's where we want to be. We want to have significance in relation to our existence with Krishna in the spiritual dimension. And that's what we're trying to find here while in the material world, while going down so many different alleyways as a spirit soul who's, controlled by the three modes of nature, and is actually trying to elevate itself through the different stages of bhakti, ultimately to attain prema bhakti. So these it's an interesting situation in which we're finding ourselves, and we're trying to find significance. That's what Queen Kunti is giving us the hint here to try to do, and that means in relation to Krishna. But I want to get back to the philosophical side of it as well, philosophical existence. I remember when I first heard, I was asking my spiritual master who we are. I mean, I was saying that, like, sometimes I feel like I'm a writer, sometimes I feel like I'm a poet, sometimes I feel like I'm a student, sometimes who am I, and that was one of the things which drew me into the Krishna consciousness movement. Was just find the truth by approaching a spiritual master. It was written on so many posters around our college, and I was studying about truth at the time in philosophy and in English and in French philosophy and stuff, and that drew me in. I wanted to find out who I am, who is this? And then spiritual master very clearly said in one of the first letters, you are a servant of Krishna, you're a servant of God. So that was very comforting to know that I finally found out who I am. I'm not this, sometimes I think I'm a great philosopher, poet, whatever, and when I wasn't, but in my mind I might have been. And sometimes I'm down in the dumps, I'm a useless guy, I'm no, so that gave me some groundwork, something to hold on to. And then I'm thinking in some of the examples that are in the Bhagavatam, how the philosophy is so important. You have Jai Bharat. And I think this Jai Bharat example is an incredible one, because previously he was the king. What more significance do you want? Not only the king, but his father was an empowered incarnation of God, King Rishabhadev, Lord Rishabhadev. Your brothers are the 9 Yogendras. They are, they're not on the platform of the Mahajans as such, but they're completely empowered living entities. And the Bhagavatam is their words are spoken of in the Bhagavatam, so they're incredibly important people. So this is Maharaj Bharat. He has so many wives, so many wonderful sons himself, but then he wanted to go to the forest. So this is really, really significant, because it gives us an idea of how we live our lives at different times in our lives. It's very hard when you're 25 and you want to get married and you just want to go to the forest, and start acting as though you should be in the forest. There's not really the time for that, really. You should actually start to look after your household, your life, your family, your your obligations, your business, these and your spiritual development is very much as well. You should contribute to your temple. You should. I was reading about Prabhupada. When he was younger, he was just about to go for initiation with Bhaktisiddhanta, but he had been. It's very interesting. He had just had a couple of instances of association with a spiritual master, but he used to go to the local math in Allahabad, and he used to go to Calcutta as well to hear about a spiritual master. But a spiritual master in 1932 was doing this parikram all around Vrindavan, but there was only one point that he could take a few days off from work to actually be there. So that's really, really significant. Bhaktisiddhanta was there for 20, 30 days, but he was only able to take 2 days off. And and that was when he went to see his spiritual master in Kosi, and he timed it. His whole business thing was timed so he could be there at the time. And when he got there, he realized that Bhaktisiddhanta was only going to give a talk. This was the last talk. So what happened was that some people came, some of the tour devotees, the Parakram devotees, they came and said there was going to be a Parakram to Keshashayi Vishnu temple, which I'm sure is a wonderful temple. But a lot of people got up and went there, but only a few actually stayed to hear Bhaktisiddhanta. And that was Srila Prabhupada. And Bhaktisiddhanta started to talk for about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And some of the members of the inner core were there, the sannyasis, they had to get up and leave to do some of the various tasks in the for the Parakram. Anybody who's been on the one in Radhanath Swami's one every year, for 5,000, 6,000 people go. There's lots of organisation because you go to places and there's so much food, and you have to organise so many things. So there's a whole organisation behind it. Actually, one time it was taken by Britannica, Encyclopedia Britannica or something. They do this series, and they did a whole series on how they organise this festival, these paragrams. So, but anyway, some of the sannyasis had to get up to leave, and but Prabhupada stayed on. Sometimes he was saying, he knew what Bhaktisiddhanta was saying. Sometimes he wasn't, but he just knew that he was just drinking in the words of Bhaktisiddhanta, and so some of the. So he would stay there even towards the end, and eventually Bhaktisiddhanta stopped, and then the next morning he left on his car, and Abai was there seeing Bhaktisiddhanta leave. But then fortuitously, or by Krishna's arrangement, the next month in the Allahabad temple they were going to open up a centre, and there was going to be initiation. So Abai put his name forward, and so when Bhaktisiddhanta came, to the head devotees there said to Bhaktisiddhanta that some devotees want to get initiation, and they said, there's a Mr. Day here who helps the math. He does this, he does that, he sings, he gets patrons to come, he gets them to give, he gives donations himself. So he was a really active member in that sense. And Bhaktisiddhanta, yes, he likes to hear. I have marked him well. I would very much be pleased to have him as my disciple. So when Abai heard that, it was absolutely like an explosion for him, because the other devotees didn't know how did he know Mr. Day? He's never met him before. How is this happening? And so and then afterwards, Bhaktisiddhanta would have about a dozen times. He'd have regular meetings with Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada would speak to Bhaktisiddhanta about many things, that a lot of other devotees would not talk to him about. And I know what that is like. I remember even when I was on that Parakram, there was Radhanath Swami invited me into was a garden there in the mood of Vrindavan, and he was there, and Malati was there, and some other quite really significant, well-known devotees were there, and I felt very shy about going in, and what would I say to these people? I'm thinking in this term. So, in general, people would be a little bit like that to talk to Bhaktisiddhanta. He's a pure devotee and whatever, such a significant person. But Abai would go there and talk with him, and Bhaktisiddhanta revealed his mind on several occasions to Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was listening. There's a famous picture. Prabhupada was holding his little hand of his son, and Bhaktisiddhanta saying there will be fire in the mat. So these are just incredible parts of. I just thought I'd get onto that story. I can't actually remember exactly why I got onto it, but it is a whole powerful explosion. It's about the truth. That's basically what it was. Learning the truth. Philosophically. So Jad Bharat, all of those devotees, in his next life he became a deer, but then in the life after he became the son of a Brahmin. So he could have been very socially significant, but he wasn't. he became like a dumb and a deaf man. He didn't want to have anything to do with any social activity because he didn't want to compromise his soul to become entangled in the material world again. So our philosophy is very, very deep. It's very, very strong. I mean, in the first words of Krishna's first words in Bhagavad Gita, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. Bhagavad Gita, all of these verses, 2:16 and 2:17. I should have quoted the Sanskrit there. Oh, sorry, the third chapter. Contents of the Gita. For this, Najayate Mriyatava Kata Chinnam Bhutva Bhavitavana Bhuyaha Jo Nitya Shashvatoyam Parunona Hanyate Hanyamane Sharire. For the soul there is neither birth nor death, nor is any time he has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. So to understand the existence as a soul and not as God, which is what so many impersonalist philosophers will say, where you're God, I'm God, where everybody's God. That's such a mistake. And Prabhupada says that there's very few men can understand that the exact position of the soul in relation to the super soul. And we're eternal, we're unchangeable. It remains atomic in comparison to the infinite self. Like, we're atomic, we're infinitesimal as the soul, whereas the supreme soul is infinite, unending. We're infinitesimal, but we never become equal to the infinite. We never. So these are all important philosophical explanations about the nature of existence, and which is given here in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this another major problem. Materialists, they say that life symptoms take place at certain mature conditions of material life. So that's even more bizarre, more incredible. They don't even say we exist. They have no understanding of existence. They don't even, of course, they're trying to be God by creating all sorts of contrary situations to try to relieve the temporariness of this world. And that's Prabhupada, that the last couple of words in that sentence, Prabhupada says, we may therefore invent by our advancement of material knowledge all sorts of counteracting material resources, but without being guided by the Lord, all such inventions end in fiasco. So even living in this world is a disaster. We talk about simple living and high thinking. Prabhupada has mentioned it. But how easy is it? I was just thinking, I'm coming down and I'm washing my teeth. I turn on the tap, the water is there. How's all that happening? So I blow my nose. I take a little tissue and I blow my nose. All of these things are there. So I'm living in this world in this way, but under no understanding of how all of this thing came. I've just become used to being a consumer in society, but still, all of these things are done. Even this, what we have here, this setup for Skype and for this Zoom or the other types of things. So, but Prabhupada says we're not against science. We can use things in Krishna service, but we have to be extremely careful with how we use it. And it looks like more and more now we have to be very conscious of how we use it, because Prabhupada says here it ends in fiasco. Definitely it ends in fiasco because the many trillions of tons of ice are being melted since the last so many years from around the solar caps, and the weather in Ireland. You just have to look out the window, and I don't think I've ever seen inverted commas summer. June, July, August, September, barely 2 days together there has been sunshine. And by the way, I'm doing a tourist advertisement here for Ireland. So if anyone wants to come to Ireland, you have the benefit of not having very little sunshine. Sorry, folks, but that's the reality. Although at other times, I remember an Indian summer back in 1976, when Prabhupada was in the UK. There was no rain for 2 to 3 months. It was sunshine practically every day. Incredible time, actually. But then again, you would kind of go on an airplane to Spain and you get the same thing. So, existence and temporariness, and trying to stop the thrust of the temporariness of the world, trying to find permanence amidst all the temporariness. This seems to be our constant activity. But if we do it for Krishna, then it has a different effect. If we do it as service for Krishna, then it has effect. If we try to set up a temple for Krishna, that has a permanent effect. If we try to give out books for Krishna and it will change somebody's life, that is a temple. If we have classes on Krishna and we're setting up a weekly schedule that we give classes on Krishna, that has a powerful effect, because it's giving the permanence amidst the impermanence. It's given eternality amidst the temporariness. So that's what we can do with our temporary existence, or the soul, the eternal soul, in this situation can act in this way and bring the spiritual dimension here to the material atmosphere. So I'm giving all these examples of how the philosophy is so important, but I have to give also the importance of the chanting, of actually the pure sound vibration, just by hearing the mantra. Again, I refer to all the powerful, solid work done by Satyananda Swami and, of course, other devotees in this area, and how he takes it so wonderfully from Prabhupada's purports. We all know Prabhupada wanted us to achieve and try to do many things, but if you look at his purports, so much he talks about the holy name and the importance of pure chanting. And Satyananda Swami has done an amazing amount of work to try to get us to somehow or other to try to perform that activity. So when we perform that activity of pure chanting, it brings us outside the material realm, outside of the clutches of the material world, so that it says that even the death of a relative, in the Bhagavad Gita says that in the most greatest difficulty, we remain balanced, equipoised, and so on. But now I want to kind of change this a little bit as well. But that is for ourselves. That's how we should think. But it's not for everybody else. In that sense, it's not how we should think for everybody else. Like, we don't just say to another person who's had some great difficulty, and there you are. So, well, it's only karma. Well, it's Krishna sent this to you for your, this purification. I mean, it's a very difficult thing to say. You may say it sometimes, but you have to say an awful lot before if you do. I was listening to an example there recently that if somebody has a broken arm, it's not suddenly that it gets healed in straight away. It takes time to heal. So in this world we have so many ups and downs, and we can and whereas we are dealing with our own situations as best as we can, still we should also be conscious of other people's, and not try to assume or not try to impose this philosophy on other people when they're in the midst of a grieving process, and where they're trying to process what's actually happening. It's not so easy that suddenly we're able to deal with everything in a completely transcendental way, because we're not transcendental. We're struggling somewhere in the levels of spiritual life. So and therefore we also have to apply that to ourselves as well, because I think this is also an important aspect too. We also tend to think that we should be transcendental and not give ourselves a bit of space to try to process what's happening to us. It's very, very important in spiritual life. And also, I mentioned a few times before, we also should have our cabinet, people who we consult when there's different things happening to us that we're trying to process. We're trying to realize what's going on. When we come to Krishna consciousness at the start, it's quite black and white. It's quite that, yeah, you're in Maya, you're not in Maya, you're this, you're that. This kind of mentality is there, and it has a kind of a propulsion to get us up into space to a little bit. But then we start to level out in space, and then we start to have to try to deal with, oh my God, I'm in this situation I didn't think I was. I thought everybody else was, but now I see it's me. Now I have to start dealing with myself. And then see, can we start to really deal with ourselves? And then we deal with people, and we're compassionate with people who are in that same situation with us, and we don't just fire the philosophy at them and try to get them to come around to the way that we think they should be, and try to instruct them in how things are. Prabhu, this is, Master, this is the way it should be. You should do this, and you should do this, and you should do this. And why did you do? There's such a tendency to want to do that, but it's kind of more difficult to be empathic to what the other person is going through. And then you may actually be able to, by hearing that other person, whatever is wrong with that they're finding, they may be able to deal with it themselves. Because a lot of the time, we know what's wrong with us. A lot of the time we do, but we may be not prepared to face up to it. And sometimes we need our spouse, who's generally sometimes is the Prime Minister in the cabinet, to point out things to us. Or maybe in an association with brahmacharis, they have, like for instance, there's some brahmacharis are coming over to them from the manor, and then I was asking them to, they were asking to come over, and then I told them what was on offer, and then they said to me, now I'll have to go back to the brahmachari council, and then we'll talk about it there, and then we'll bring what we're thinking to the management council of the temple. There's a whole structure set up there, and so we need that kind of cabinet, all of us in all of the different ashrams that we're in, and to be able to consult. What do I do in this situation? What do I do in this situation? Okay, thanks for your advice. Now I feel more confident to make the choice which is suitable for me, and thank you for giving me that information back. In positions of authority, sometimes we have to take the kshatriya position. But kshatriya means to protect from hurt. So kshatriya doesn't mean we're going around hurting everybody. It's protecting from hurt. And so that's something which there is a whole science and a whole training going on in Iskcon at the moment. There's the education ministry. There is, Sandini sent me on a link to the Iskcon management link. There's a whole amount of things going on there. Why is this there? It's like everything else. Is because it's prevent us from going over lines, because there's tried and tested methods of how these things happen. And as a young fledgling organisation, as Iskcon, we have to bring those on board. We have to learn how to deal with each other, and how to deal with the inevitable difficulties which come up in community, in the self, in the normal run of things in life. These are all various things which we have to take into consideration. So that's why I want to just to summarize that we want to understand the importance of the philosophy of who we are, our existence, which is given to us in Bhagavad Gita. Although related in this particular purport, the existence means our existence in relation to Krishna, which is Queen Kunti saying, and she's saying that we don't have any existence, and Prabhupada in the word use non-existence, non-entities, which I believe is to do with just because we're having lives in karma rather than our actual true nature. The importance of chanting, how we need to get beyond all of these things. We really, really need to develop a safe space. And Bhakti Bhagavat Maharaj made this whole point about that we all have to have this safe space in every morning which we go into. And it gives us our strength of where we only listen, we hear the holy name, and Prabhupada says just hear, and we pray as well, and we have to have an understanding of our self and others as well. I mean, this is such a place like because we have conditioning. We have to work through that conditioning. it's another aspect of the self and of who we are, of working through our conditioning. I remember when I was younger, I was trying to work this out myself, and I was reading a philosopher, R.D. Laing. He was a psychologist actually, about self and others. And one of the things he said was that in the family, sometimes it's the most dysfunctional scenario. Now, he was a kind of a radical philosopher at the time, and so I kind of rolled back an awful lot on some of his ideas, which were a little too intense, but we have to understand, if we have patterns of behavior which are negative for us, we have to start to examine those, and it's kind of comes into the category of anartha nivritti, in which we have patterns of behavior in which we're trying to deal with, which bring us in negative results. So this is very important, how we understand who we are in relation to others as well. So this is kind of a bit of a psychological area, but we're leaving the material world. So we've been this has been a place where we shouldn't be. It's a real aliens situation, and we're trying to realize who we are. So we have defense mechanisms to try to deal with the world. We may be a yes person. Yes, everything's fine. Yeah, no, I'm wonderful. No, there's no problem at all. No problem at all. And then behind you saying, "Bleed this dirty," Do you know what I'm saying there? It's like we have defense mechanisms which we kind of fall into. We have a persona sometimes. Yeah, everything's fine, everything's wonderful. Yeah, you're wonderful, And then you go behind the person's back, you say, that person, I tell you what, that person's a real problem. And then as collectively, as a group, we enter into problems there where we have gossiping, we have backbiting, we have, all these lower kind of things will happen. So I'm just trying to point out that who the self is, what we should do in relation to the self. We should be the philosophical self, but we should also be dealing with the conditional self, the self that has all these anarthas coming. This is part of our existence, even though it is somewhat temporary. Like, hopefully in the material world, spiritual world, if ever I get there, I won't have to worry about this particular existence. But while in this particular existence, I have to work with it, the conditioning, so that I can actually get to the stage where I am the philosophical self and the spiritual self. We talk about the spiritual self, but then there's the emotional self, who we are, as well. And this is the whole Chaitanya Charitamrita is talking about the relationships between the devotees, Krishna and Radharani, that's the basis of our philosophy. Krishna's servants, all the different ways in which we relate to Krishna. So many things going on at the same time. I mean, so many rasas going on. If we read the Nectar of Devotion, which we had just in a reading group did recently, so many some rasa vasas, but so many rasas which are complementary. So many things are going on for Krishna in emotional exchanges with the devotees. The gopis, the cowherd boys, the yogic brahmanas, the yogic brahmanas' wives. So many relationships going on in reality with Krishna. So this is the reality that Kunti is talking about here as well. Their pastimes with Krishna, and so that's the I that's been talking about here. So there. So this is as devotees we have to become expert, and it's easily said, but we have to try to train ourselves so we can become compassionate living entities. I'm saying that with almost like with tongue in cheek when I consider my lack of compassion, and we have to become wise, and we have to know when to apply the philosophy, time, place, and circumstance, and in that sense, we have to become bold preachers in Krishna's service. So this whole feeling, and this is where some of the other religious systems do well, and they have a very understanding of the presence of God's love. they have a very, very good understanding of it. I mean, I was listening to this devotee. Can't remember her name now. Oh, Krishna. Oh my God, I can't remember her name. But she does talk about that. She does lots of interfaith dialogue, and she said one point, I find that some of the people from other spiritual systems have more feeling of this presence of God than I do in my system, even though philosophically our system has all of this understanding and just descriptions of the pastimes. So Krishna is not limited. He's not. It's not that we can force Krishna to adhere to a particular set of rules that we would like to impose on Krishna, which would satisfy our sense of how things should be. Krishna's Svarat is independent, and so he can appear in all different religious systems, and we can actually get great benefit by ourselves understanding how Krishna's love for us. It is an amazing thing. I mean, we understand we have to be humble. We're fallen souls, millions of lifetimes, all of that. But at the same time, Krishna actually loves us in that way as well. So this soul that's there, Krishna loves, and this emotional heart that Krishna loves also. And we love Krishna the same way. We love Krishna. We try to perform service for Krishna, and we like to do many things. I've seen devotees, they stay up all night, do so many different services. I just couldn't do it. I mean, I need my sleep and whatever. But they perform these amazing activities because they're showing their love. They show their love. They demonstrate their love for Krishna. But also they have to feel loved by Krishna as well. And therefore they have these exchanges, So the more that we can get onto that spontaneous platform, that is what our philosophy is about. And we're trying to become lovers of God, and as bhakti yoga, the science of devotion. So anyway, I'm going to stop there. I don't know if there is any comments or any questions. The four walls have a question. No, I'm only joking. Just one other comment. That I was in a class there recently, and the reception was really poor. I was in a hotel, and it just didn't work. And but it was one of the best classes I gave. I kind of listened to it afterwards because, and I understand now what Prabhupada said about preaching to the four walls, because you really can get into actually giving the class, and but I'm not saying that's the situation. And of course, with these, perhaps we should try to go on to a Zoom kind of situation where you can see other people and you can go back and forth with different questions and so on, because it's a little more difficult when you have to type a question and when to type it and when's the class over, and it's not an easy thing to do. So maybe that'd be something we could look at as well, and or maybe we can get rid of this coronavirus or whatever. We can just have normal classes again. Okay, so I don't think there's any comments. So I'd like to stop there, and again, thank you for everybody for listening. Gantara Srimad Bhagavatam